Hello, Buckeye fans. I'm Patrick Murphy. Dave Biddle here at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Dave, we just got done talking to Carlos Locklyn, new Ohio State running backs coach. First impressions, go.
Yeah, kind of what I expected because, I cheated. I watched some of his press conferences and knew a little bit about his background. Did not disappoint. I mean, he has all the charisma that you could ever hope for, just dripping with charisma. And, talked about his philosophy about, how he wants to coach up the running backs. And I think he's going to be an electric recruiter. The way he just captured the room. And then afterwards, he's going around shaking everybody's hand in the room, all the reporters, everybody in the room. And it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
We're not joking. This is the largest beat in American sports. I'm not joking. Like, name the sport. Name the team. Yankees, no. This is larger. Like, Lakers, no. This is larger. Like, we have NFL people that'll come and be like, wow, it's like a Tuesday press conference. There's this many people here? Yeah, so I was very impressed with Carlos Locklyn. And I think even though it was a very strange twist ever since Tony Alford left for Michigan, and then Brian Day had so many. He said he interviewed up to 12 people, mostly on Zoom. And they were never in a hurry, but I think, and the proof will be in the pudding, I think when the dust is settled, Ohio State has upgraded at the running back coach position. What were your initial thoughts of Coach Locklyn?
Yeah, I think you hit on it. Look, he said you guys have all probably read about my story. No, actually, we wrote about his story. We talked about his story.
Yeah.
Really unique situation with, working in law enforcement. He talked about that and how, dealing with 6 running backs is nothing to dealing with, criminals, rooms of criminals, blocks, as he called them, while he was doing that. He talked about, trying to go to a smaller school to get his first running back's job, and he got turned down saying he needed more experience. He was like, that was God's way of telling me that I was thinking too small, which I thought was a great perspective, because most people, you get shot down at a small school and you're like, well, what is this really for me? No, he thought, I need to aim higher. So he ends up at Memphis. He even said, when asked about, balancing carries with 2 running backs, talking about how while he wasn't the running backs coach at Memphis, he carried himself like he was. And he just listed Darrell Henderson, Tony Pollard, I think 5 guys he listed that he helped coach at Memphis. So the confidence is not going to be an issue. And not that it is with any of the guys in this building, but he seems like a perfect fit to come in. Now, my question, and I didn't get a chance to ask, but how do you handle coming in end of spring practice? Now, he's talked about he's already gotten to know some of these guys from recruiting, but I think it will be interesting to see how it plays out over the course of the last week here and then through summer, fall camp. But it doesn't seem like it's going to be a big issue for him. I think he'll connect with these guys real quickly.
Yeah, and that's where it went. I don't want to say it went south with Tony, but I know from excellent sources that Tony got a little bit lazy on the recruiting trail, and to the point where Coach Day really had to push him in recruiting. And you're not, it's not like you're recruiting like an O-line where you're getting like 4 or 5 guys a year. You're getting like 1 or 2.
Yeah.
That's disappointing because I like Tony personally. He was always good to me. So it was disappointing to learn that he got lazy on the recruiting trail. I can't imagine Carlos Locklyn, who granted is younger than Tony by about 10 years, but still, it's not like Tony's an old man. Carlos is 46, which if you ask me is a very young man.
How old did you turn yesterday?
48.
Okay.
30 again. My 18th anniversary of my 30th birthday.
Love it.
But yeah, I can't imagine this guy being anything short of a good recruiter. Will he be elite? I mean, that's a high bar that Brian Hartline and Tim Walton, and we'll see maybe James Laurinaitis have set. But I think he can get there. And Tony just wasn't there. I mean, he had a lot of near misses. Bijan Robinson gave him a verbal commitment and later rescinded that and went to Texas, of course. So a lot of near misses, and he's landed some good ones. I mean, J.K. Dobbins was a great kid. TreVeyon Henderson was the #1 running back in the country. So it's not like he's been Tony was a terrible recruiter. My guess is that Carlos Locklyn, he goes by Lock. He goes by Coach Lock, as he said. He wants his guys to call him Coach Lock. I think he'll be an upgrade over Tony in both areas. And I think Tony was able to coach up J.K. Dobbins, the only 2,000-yard rusher in Ohio State history in a single season. So it wasn't like he was some schlub. But I think Locklyn, I loved everything I heard about him before today, and I was impressed how he handled himself. Not a big surprise. It's kind of what I expected, but really impressed with this hire.
Yeah, and I think he brings some of what guys liked about Alford. We've heard about kind of the relationships he's formed with players. We've seen Tony Alford out here with guys, be it guys that are currently on the roster when we're here for recruiting camps, arm around them, really talking to. You can tell guys like Tony Alford. And, yes, there may have been some issues recruiting, just because of you're not closing it. But I think Coach Lock brings similar things in terms of the way he will build these relationships, or already has these relationships with some of the guys. Another thing I found really interesting, he said he thinks that running back is one of the worst coach positions in football. And then
I started laughing, and then he was dead serious.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, geez, I'm in the front row. I probably shouldn't have laughed at that because this guy's going to come and punch me in the face.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because, talking to people about this hire, a lot of people have said with running back coaches, you just need a guy who can recruit. Either running back can play or he doesn't. And I think there's something to that, but I think his point of view is that there can be a lot more to that. You can find the right guy that, look, this guy has this, this, and this. If we can get him to do this, this, and this, now we've got a really good player that maybe no one else is looking at. Bill Kurlick's already reported on Bucknuts about some of the guys he is recruiting. Now, most of them are 4 or 5-star guys, but I wouldn't be surprised if he picks a few kind of, off the wall maybe picks for Ohio State, guys that he sees certain qualities in and thinks he can coach up. What do you think about running backs coaches? What do you need to be as a running backs coach to be successful?
Yeah, I don't buy at all the idea that running backs can't be coached up. There's just so much. I mean, we could just use Ohio State players as examples. I mean, Eddie George is example number one. Do we think he got coached up? I mean, he came in looking like Zeus, and he had a really good freshman game against Syracuse, which at the time was actually a big win. He had 3 touchdowns. Then what happened? The fumbles and everything. And then he becomes one of the best running backs in Ohio State history, Heisman Trophy winner. I think an even better example, because that's the obvious one. Let's look at Jonathan Wells. He had all of the skills. Jim Tressel got here, coached him 1 year. He said Jonathan Wells has a little bit of everything. The one thing he doesn't do, he doesn't square his shoulders enough. And then Tressel early that year would play true freshman Lydell Ross over Jonathan Wells. What happened? Eventually, Jonathan Wells listened to Tress, ran with his shoulders square. And what happened? By the end of that year, Jonathan Wells was a BMF. To use a Pulp Fiction term or a UCF term. Now they've kind of stolen that from Pulp Fiction.
Don't Google that one at work.
Yeah, well, you can Google it. Just don't tell your coworkers what it means. I bet you guys know what it means. But Pulp Fiction started. Now UCF has taken it, or UFC has taken it. I like UFC, so it's all good. But that's just another example. By the end of that 2001 season, Jonathan Wells was fantastic. Ask Michigan in that 2001 game. He had 3 touchdowns in the first half alone. One reason he didn't have 300 yards in that game is because he had cramps and couldn't keep going. My point is, running backs can definitely be coached up. The idea that it's just give them the ball and that's it. No, I mean there's pass pro. There's a lot to it. The actual running, like I'm saying with Jonathan Wells, everybody's got something they can do better. With Wells, it was getting his shoulders squared. And another thing I wrote real quick that I like about Locklyn, he didn't talk about this today unless I missed it. His philosophy with running backs is you better play special teams or you ain't playing. There's one ball, especially if you're a young guy. If you're Travion Henderson, you're not going to be covering kicks and stuff. But if you're James Peoples, he didn't use James as an example. If you're guys like T.C. Caffey, Dixon Williams, or Williams Dixon, all these guys, if you're a young running back, you want to see the field, you are going to have to play special teams for Carlos Locklyn. He's made that clear, and I love that about him.
We've talked about it a couple times. Steve Hellwagon's about to join us here after getting. If you haven't watched the interview yet, they are on their way up on our YouTube page, so they'll be up here shortly. But we touched on it a few times. He has relationships with some of these guys. He recruited Quinshon Judkins. He recruited Travion Henderson. He recruited James Peoples. Dave, I'll ask you first, and then we'll go to Steve. How important is that, especially given where he's coming in, when he's coming in, to already have at least some foundation with the guys he's going to be coaching?
I think it helps, definitely. And now to what degree, I don't know, but I think it certainly helps, especially in this day and age where guys can just leave. I don't think they didn't have a previous relationship with Coach Locke that they would have left, but this certainly helps. And Quinshon Judkins and Locksley are from the exact same town, Montgomery, Alabama, but an even smaller town, kind of near Montgomery, Pike Road, Alabama, a very small town in the deep South. They're both from the same town. Now, they didn't know each other until Quinshon was in high school, but still very interesting that they're from the exact same town. And like Patrick said, he also recruited Travion, which I think that's big. They've had a relationship now for 5 years. He recruited James Peoples. I think that's big, and he said he's getting to know T.C. Caffey and Sam Williams Dixon a lot better. So I think that helps. We'll see to what degree.
Steve, Dave and I kind of gave our initial impressions. What did you make of our 20 or whatever it was minutes with Coach Locke?
Oh, very impressed with him, and talks about how he works out every day because he wants to look as good as his guys. That way they know that he's putting the time in and sacrificing physically as much as he's asking them to do, and all these other things. I mean, just very impressive. Overall, I thought he's an elite relationship builder. He's not a recruiter. says the running backs position is the worst coach position in
on
football, which is kind of an interesting thought. Just a lot of opinions and a lot of, kind of a breath of fresh air type guy that I think, is going to relate well to the kids of today and understand, what these kids are after and what they're looking for. And I think he's going to drive it to even bigger heights as they go forward, getting better players in there and getting better results as they go forward.
You talked about wanting to look the part of a running backs coach. I went out in the hallway and talked to him for a second. He's not much taller than I am. And I like to think I'm in pretty good shape. I go to the gym, as Dave knows. He dwarfs me in terms of size.
He is jacked.
Yes, he looks like he could probably go out and still play running back today. I don't know how much that matters, but he talked about just having that demeanor with players, which he learned from his law enforcement time of, you don't want guys to think that they can get away with things, and it helps if you have a physical presence. You've done this a long time. You've seen a lot of running backs coach. Do you think that makes a difference for guys?
Well, I think it can. I go all the way back to Tim Spencer was the running backs coach at Ohio State when Eddie George won the Heisman Trophy. And, he looked like just stepped out of GQ right off the field, as well. So, he really looked and felt the part. And I think that, they've had different guys over the years that have done it different ways. And I just think it's all about getting those results, getting quality people in there and then developing them and getting the best results out of them as possible. And it sounds like running the football. I think that Coach Day has come all the way around to understand how important it is to be able to run the football. Talked about running the quarterback today during the course of his remarks. And one of our reporter friends said, interesting, he's talking about running the quarterbacks and in parenthesis, getting the quarterbacks hurt and needing more than one quarterback to get through this season. So that'll be interesting to see how that goes.
We'll get to some of Coach Day's things in a second. Dave, I thought it was interesting that Locke said he got the text from Ryan Day and was excited. He said he was just getting up. He showed his wife. His wife didn't know who Ryan Day was. This was to kind of initiate conversations. But then he was asked about having the block O on your chest. And unlike a lot of coaches, he didn't hype up Ohio State. He said he's going to do what he's going to do, whether it's Oregon, whether he's anywhere. I think that's an interesting approach. A lot of guys come in there and they want to say all the right things about Ohio State and make it all sound good. He's talking about him and the job he's going to do. And I think that's probably more important than talking about what everyone already knows, that Ohio State opens doors for you. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I like that philosophy. And I'm sure once he's been here longer, he'll sell more of what it means to be at Ohio State, but especially just getting here. I mean, he's going to do what he's always done, whether he was, a off the field assistant at Memphis, or kind of helping out behind the scenes at Florida State, to when he actually was the running backs coach at Western Kentucky and then the running backs coach at Oregon. I think he's just going to do, as he said, he's going to do what he's been doing. It's just now going to carry more weight. Now he didn't say that, I don't believe that, but that's just me saying it. Like, he just does what he does. And because he's the type of guy, as I said, he's just dripping with charisma, and he's not going to come across like a used car salesman. He comes across very genuine. So just do what you do. And now having that block O, even though he didn't put it this way, it's just going to carry even more weight.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Steve, you already mentioned some of what Ryan Day said, and we won't go into all of that here, but we will hit on some highlights. Talked about running the quarterback, and they do seem to be more interested in that. You mentioned the possibility for injuries. I feel like every time we're in this building, we hear about the depth that these guys are going to need for a potentially 17, 16-game season. Do you think they're really open to using multiple quarterbacks? I mean, wow. Obviously, you don't want to have to, but Ryan Day, again, references 2014 and the third-string quarterbacks. Talked a lot about Julian Sayin and the progress he's made. What did you make of this quarterback talk?
I'm trying to reconcile everything that he said about the quarterback position. It seems like there is no true number one, but all of them seem to be, at least all of the top three, seem to be doing very well, which is Brown, Howard, and Sayin all seem to be doing very well, and it doesn't sound like they would hesitate to play any of those three if they had to. And doesn't sound like any one of them has earned the starting job just yet. And again, we're only going off just the limited things that we saw one day, in practice. But we do hear some other things that are going on over here from time to time. But I think Brown is definitely pushing Howard for the top spot. and that Sayin is showing that no moment is too big for him, and that he could be there. It's just, again, difficult for a freshman, that consistency factor to be on top of his game, week in, week out. It's going to be really hard for a true freshman to do that with everything else that kind of comes at you in this setting, and everything that's demanded of you. It's really difficult, I think, for a young guy to get that. He mentioned that Howard's experience is showing a little bit, which I think is good, gives him a little bit of a leg up, and that he did tick off, that he has good accuracy, that he plays alive in the pocket, and is not afraid to step up and run the ball when they need him to, and that's going to be a part of it. So I would say it's Howard 1, Brown 1A, Sayin 1B. I mean, it's pretty tightly bunched. It's like a horse race. They're coming down the stretch. You got 3 horses across the middle of the track, just pushing to try and take that top spot.
Yeah, my 2 main takeaways, the main one is Julian Sayin. The fact that he was asked, Coach Day was asked, is he in the mix? And he said, he's definitely in the mix. Like, it had been easy, even if he is in the mix, for Coach Day to kind of, stomp out the hype a little bit. True freshman quarterback should still be in high school, right? It tells you, like, everything we've been hearing and a little bit that we've seen, that, the hype is legit with Julian Sayin. Does that mean he's going to be the starter as a true freshman? No, it doesn't mean that. But for Coach Day to say he's in the mix, that says a lot to me. The other thing, Steve alluded to this, was I definitely think if there was a game today, Will Howard would be the starter. Why? Just the way Coach Day talked about it. He's not going to anoint a starter right now, but the way he talked about Will Howard, curious if you agree with this, Patrick, just seemed to be, he just kind of, reading between the lines, we've gotten to know Coach Day just from covering him. Not that we go out for beers or anything. Although if he wants to, we'll do it. We'll do it if he really wants to. But seriously, we've got to know him, and you can read between the lines with Coach Day. And I think it's a very close competition. I think he likes a lot of what Devin Brown brings to the table, but just the way he talked about the way Will Howard keeps plays alive, his leadership, his experience, how he can just run the ball on called quarterback runs, his accuracy, boom, 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 boom. And he talked him up a lot. So I think probably Will Howard will be the starter right now, but Devin Brown's right there. And then Julian Sayin, it sounds like he is at least pushing these guys, which makes things very interesting.
Yeah, I do agree. And look, I think from what we'd seen before today, I would have said Devin Brown seems to be a little bit ahead just from some of the throws he'd made in some of the practices. But I do think that you don't bring Will Howard in here unless you're pretty sure he's going to be the starter from the get-go. You're confident in that experience, his ability, things like that. So it seems like it's playing out the way we kind of all thought at the beginning of spring. We'll obviously get to see more on Saturday. We'll get to see some more on Friday as well at an open practice. The last thing I want to touch on from Coach Day, though there was plenty, and again, videos going up on the Bucknuts YouTube page already, the right side of that offensive line. I think that's probably the other question there, maybe other than, like, is Jeremiah Smith going to start, which I think we all have a pretty similar answer to. What did you make of Coach Day's comments? I'll get both of your thoughts on that. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, it's interesting. He certainly didn't rule out the idea of them adding someone from the portal. It would have been easy for him to say, we feel good about that. But he stopped short of that. He said, it's too early to say that, that all concerns have been alleviated on the right side of the line. They still need to work some things out. And he left the door open that they could find somebody in the portal. I found that interesting.
Steve, we've seen a little bit of Josh Fryer, Luke Montgomery. We've heard about Josh Fryer's body transformation. We talked to him. Do you feel any more comfortable with the right side of the offensive line now that we're reaching the end of spring practice here?
I don't know if it's the right side of the offensive line or just the offensive line in general. No, not real comfortable with the whole thing, having watched that scrimmage. And, some of it could have been the twos probably gave up more plays than probably the ones did. But listening today, we thought Montgomery was pretty close to locking up that right guard spot, and he did talk up Josh Fryer as the right tackle, Simmons as the left tackle. Said that Fryer had repped some at guard, that Hinsman and McLaughlin had also repped some at guard. So they're just trying to identify the best 5-man rotation, whatever it may be. Speaking a week ago, McLaughlin and Hinsman both said they really hadn't done a whole lot at guard, and Fry said he really hadn't. He says if you thin somebody's reps out at center and make them play some guard, then that's maybe not the best way to go about it. But I think that they are exhausting all possibilities, and I think the best 5 will play. Whether Montgomery's in that 5 or not remains to be seen. So, it's experimental time over there, I guess. You know, we only got to see the one day, and we don't know what else has happened. We do believe that this defensive line is really good. Coach Day asserted today that the interior defensive linemen have given them a lot of fits, and that's the guards and the centers. Trying to block those guys. So, again, better to find this out on April the 11th than to find it out on November the 28th or January the 1st. Those would not be the days that you'd want to find these things out.
For sure. There was plenty more from both guys. You can, as I said, watch the video on Bucknuts' YouTube page already up there.
It'll be on the front page here in about 5 minutes, probably.
Awesome.
So
we will, the three of us, there's three of us here. We will be on my podcast, the Bucknuts Happy Hour tomorrow, looking ahead to the spring game. We'll do that tomorrow afternoon, so keep an eye out for that. Plenty of stuff. You're going to have stuff on Coach Locklyn. We'll plenty of stuff up today, so keep an eye on Bucknuts throughout the day. There will be a lot to read, a lot to watch. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We appreciate it.
Yep.
Stuff, boys.